She was originally a ray of pure energy from the beginning of the Hongmeng era, but was caught up in one conspiracy after another. She thought it was cool, but to her surprise, due to the luck of the koi carp, she is highly favored by the auspicious beast cubs. Due to being entangled in filth, she is also very rare among fierce beast cubs. I originally wanted to take revenge with my cubs, but Auntie That fool killed himself. Auntie That bad guy was stabbed to death by another bad guy. Gigi. We caught something that the dog was sneaking around. Can we eat it now? Ah. Spit it out quickly. This person is bad, eating it will cause stomach problems. Keywords of the novel. The nun supporting role is favored by the 6-year-old cubs without a pop-up window. The nun supporting role is also favored by the 6-year-old cubs. Download the complete text. The nun supporting role is also favored by the 6-year-old cubs. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Wedge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Wedge. As dusk approached, the darkness darkened and the sky darkened, as if it had been splashed with ink. The setting sun of the Gangfeng season falls extremely fast, and in just a moment, there is still sunlight. In just such an instant, there is only a heavy black curtain left. The bone-scraping gust of wind whistled and spun, without a hint of rest. The dark and stubborn stones were rustling, and ravines rolled up dazzling stone powder, spreading everywhere. On the boulder slope, a small figure struggled to move forward and struggled for a while before finally breaking off the last golden for fruit in front of them and placing it in the vine basket on its back. The grass and fruit of the Gangfeng season are already a bit overripe. After peeling off the hard skin, the moisture in the flesh is severely lost, and a lot of spiritual energy is dissipated. However, the advantage lies in the sweet and sticky taste, which is also very satisfying. For them, it is even more precious. After all, it is their main source of food in the northern region. Hey! Suddenly, my eyes, which were blinded by the wind into a small crevice, lit up. I suddenly widened a bit, and Bai Sheng's little finger pinched the edge of the stone crevice, digging down the roots of the grass and fruit, and successfully obtained an egg-sized dwafu snail. Just after the bitter rain season, there are still some snails hidden in the cracks of the stones, and their size has also increased. Today, she has already caught several snails in a day. The bitterness of snails during this season will be much lighter, making it a rare delicacy for them. The little figure forcefully buried the partially exposed roots of the grass fruit, took out the small gourd from his arms, and dripped a few clear and bright water droplets against the ground. A small hand patted the buried stone crevice and said, "Thank you, keep the roots well, and wait for the bitter rainy season next year, it will be another resounding fruit." After weighing the small vine basket on his back, he had a very good harvest today. The little figure was a little excited, wrapped tightly around the loose collar due to the force, and looked up at the thick ink-like sky. He didn't continue to move forward, but walked quickly towards the way he came. Along the way, there were also a few shiny golden grass fruits that were blown out by the strong wind, with small pointed corners that were quite tempting. The small figure moved its fingers with great interest, but in the end, it did not stop, carefully bypassing them one by one, and rushing towards the foot of the mountain with ups and downs in the abandoned fluorite mine at the foot of the mountain. A clear and bright voice was reciting a somewhat old wooden calf. The text on the book is extremely complex and strange, but it is obvious that the readers have become familiar with the content of this book and read it fluently. According to the ancient remnants of the demon race, the Hongmeng continent was originally a corner of the divine realm, the birthplace of gods, the burial place of gods, and the location of the divine prison for exiling fallen gods. It was during the battle between gods and demons that he was beheaded by a divine artifact and fell into this realm. The Hongmeng continent is located at the center of this realm, adjacent to the water from the 5 realms of East, South, West, North, and Central. Millions of years ago, the Hongmeng continent was a land of paradise for living beings. Rich in spiritual energy, abundant in resources, and numerous races, there are countless ascending immortals. However, hundreds of thousands of years ago, there was a great catastrophe in heaven and earth. For a moment, the once peaceful paradise was depleted of spiritual energy, mountains and rivers were shattered, and all living beings were almost extinguished. The most prosperous regions of China and the West are still shrouded in thick black karma that covers the sky and the sun. And in the middle realm, along with millions of creatures in the realm, they have already disappeared in the catastrophe. The other three realms are also vast expanses of land, filled with sorrowful clouds and extremely tragic. At the critical moment and mountains and rivers were about to collapse, 90.9 spiritual pagodas suddenly appeared in the flood and wilderness realm. Under the protection of the divine tower, the devastated wasteland, although no longer in its prime, ultimately left a glimmer of hope for the living beings. The clear and bright voice made the article read very pleasing to the ear, and the two adorable little children were mesmerized by it. Suddenly, there was a slight sound of a huge rock rubbing against the outside of the cave, and the eyes of several people inside the cave lit up. Listen, it's Aunt Gigi back. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Mengmian Shura. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Mengmian Shura. As soon as she entered the door, Bai Gigi was warmly welcomed. The little ones first ran over and called out sweetly, then turned back and held water and hot tea in front of Bai Gigi. Bai Gigi took off her heavy robe filled with stone powder and carefully put it away. This is one of their family's treasures. Washing is not willing to be done. We need to wait a little later and find those old neighbors to help with the cleaning technique. Bai Gigi kept herself clean and tidy, and the two little ones had already dragged the heavy and bumpy backpack inside. A guy thoughtfully arranged a soft cushion made of fluffy grass for her on the stone bench, while another small fist had already landed on her shoulder. Auntie, Bai Gigi suppressed her smile and took a big sip on each of her round and plump faces before contentedly taking out a dark little thing from her arms. The two little ones were excitedly big-eyed, and when the little thing appeared, the cheers had already reached boiling point. This is the habit of Bai Gigi. Sometimes it's snails with special colors, and sometimes it's small stones with strange shapes. Anyway, she brings some small things back every day. However, speaking of it, this little turtle, stuck in a crevice and almost starving to death, was the first time in over 2 years that she had caught a creature other than the Doraemon snail. This was a great surprise for the little ones, and indeed, the little one received a warm welcome from two small groups' favorite loved ones. Warm environment, and rich aroma of food always evoke a lazy and tiring feeling. The exhausted Bai Gigi collapsed on the stone bench and sweetly called out to the inside, "Chi-Chi sister, your dear little sister is back." There was a clear and melodious voice inside, with a slight hint of annoyance, but also a clear and lively tone. "Do you still know you're hungry? Coming back so late again, you're not going to die if you want the spirit stone." Bai Gigi smiled and rubbed the two small heads that were gathered together to give the turtle a bath. She gently poked the two adorable milk-fat faces with her hand, and said with a light smile, "In the future, we won't be in a hurry to accumulate spiritual stones. After dinner, Cha-la. Cha-la." A grinding sound that made people's teeth ache cut off Bai Gigi's words that had not yet been spoken, and several people stood up in shock. The giant stone blocking the entrance of the cave was unknowingly scraped and wobbled by something, and the malicious low growls outside the cave caused several people to sweat profusely. The giant rock was shaking more and more violently, although it had not yet been arched open. A suffocating stench had already filled in. I don't know if it was sharp teeth or claws digging and rubbing against the huge stones, but after only a few breaths, the highly corrosive saliva had already seeped in along the gap. Shoo, shoo. What is it? Monsters. How could there be such a thing in Lingjun? Not good. This giant rock can't hold on anymore. Bai Gigi grabbed the black stone spear standing beside her, fixed her eyes, and whispered, "It's okay, you go hide inside." Su Shi smelled the meat smell of several small dim sum in the cave, and the boulders shook more crazily. A huge red peeping eye of the evil sycophant suddenly appeared in the crack. With a hissing sound, Bai Zhizhi shook her hand vigorously, and the sharp stone spear suddenly pierced through. However, a small black wooden sword was even faster than the stone spear. The small wooden sword that struck fiercely was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, it had already fiercely penetrated the giant eye, then fiercely pulled out, and then fiercely penetrated again and again. Ah! The big eyes of the basin were instantly bleeding profusely, with black, white, and red liquids spraying all over the short and sturdy figure holding the sword. However, the intense pain did not make the giant eye shrink. The guy outside the hole roared wildly, and a foul-smelling and slippery tongue penetrated through the gap, heading straight towards Xiaoxianbao, who was poking people's eyes. With another thud, blood froze profusely, and another small wooden sword pierced through the long tongue. Ah! The rough and brutal hissing almost penetrated several people's eardrums. The boulder finally overturned, and a ferocious and ugly two-headed giant lizard roared and crashed into the cave. At a critical moment, several snake-like tree roots suddenly emerged from the ground, tying the angry giant lizard to the cave entrance. With a few crisp bangs, in just 2 or 3 breaths, the roots were broken apart, but it was enough. 2 wooden swords and 1 stone spear, perfectly coordinated and fiercely pierced the 3 huge eyes. The giant lizard let out a wild howl, its body waving wildly and painfully, and cold blood splattered all over the ground. Bai Zhizhi swung the nearby stone table and slammed it fiercely at the head of the giant lizard. 2 small wooden swords continued to thrust fiercely towards the pitiful eye sockets. 2 small round faces, white and tender, were like the birth of a Shura, already covered in crimson blood. However, the 2 pairs of cold eyes were unblinking, turning the small wooden sword in their hands to fly fiercely. 2 slippery tongues were nailed to the spot by countless tree roots, the thick tail of the giant lizard flapped outside the cave, and the neatly built thick stone wall outside the courtyard had long been overturned. In a moment of panic, the giant lizard attempted to use its tail to pull up stones and attack several people, but unfortunately, the broken stones were all blocked by the cave wall outside. The desperate lizard struggled desperately, trying to pull its head back, but the ferocious creature stomped on its head and swung it fiercely with a stone table, making it unable to break its tongue and survive. Soon, the thick leather armor and sturdy skull were smashed, causing them to roll and crack. The giant lizard only felt a mixture of red and golden light in its eyes, and then its perception of this world suddenly came to an end. Bai Zhizhi moved the giant stone slightly outward, reached out a copper mirror, and looked around, waiting for another half an hour. I saw 2 old neighbors walking out with smiles on their faces. Good job. Good job. Now when you go out, we old folks won't worry anymore. Grandpa Meng. Grandpa Leopard. Aha. Those old folks don't trust that you little dolls are going out alone. They specially let us try it out, didn't you scare us? It's okay. Bai Zhizhi looked at the dragon-headed figure in front of her, who was several times more heroic than the 2-headed giant lizards. She, along with the giant leopard, who was more than 10 feet tall, with a face full of patterns and sharp teeth protruding from her mouth, pursed her lips and said, This giant lizard is stillborn. Quite ordinary. The fierce leopard suddenly smiled, and its rich voice shook a few small ones with a dazed, ha ha ha. Xianbauer, it's good. The move is quick and decisive. Xiao Qianlan is also very good, fearless, with excellent timing. Xiaoji and Xiaoqi have accurate judgments, with a strong and calm demeanor. They are cautious enough. Great. Great. The 2 old neighbors tugged at the tail of the giant lizard and walked away, laughing loudly as they spread far away. Let's go, let's go. Go back and drink, ahaha. Don't worry. Don't worry. Where did you get the wine? Hey, don't be so vulgar as a demon. When you're happy, drinking a few sips of rainwater can also be used as good wine. Bai Zhizhi looked at the backs of her 2 old neighbors, then at the cave that had been swept clean by Grandpa Leopard's cleaning technique. She let out a long sigh and collapsed her small shoulder, feeling powerless, saying, "I'm so hungry." Bai Chi-Chi, who was originally a bit stunned, quickly regained her consciousness and walked towards the inside, muttering, "Do you still know you're hungry? I don't know who it is. It's been 3 years and I haven't seen any growth in height." In a moment, several large stone bowls were placed on a slightly notched stone table, filled with steaming noodles that Bai Jiji had just talked about last night. Being short is definitely a burden from the heavens, not my personal fault. Either it's because I have extraordinary talent and some remarkable bloodline, so I've grown a bit slower. In terms of strength, Grandpa Meng and others are not my opponents, they're amazing. Besides, how can they not grow? They eat delicious food every day. Xiaoxian Bao, who had just poked her eyeballs, had no shadow and climbed onto the stool with an innocent expression, saying, "Long long definitely long. Delicious delicious, the fruit is crushed by Xianbao, and the fire is burned by my sister," after being mentioned by her younger sister, Xiao Qianlan, who was setting chopsticks, slightly straightened her chest and pursed her lips, feeling a little happy. Wow! No wonder this noodle has such a delicate taste. It turned out to be made by Xiaoxian Bao. And this extremely old cooking method, which is neither soft nor hard, was actually made by Xiao Qianlan. TSK, amazing. Amazing. Bai Chi-Chi listened to Gigi's almost racking her brain to praise, and glanced at the smiling faces of the little ones that were almost glowing, some funny and some sad. These 3 people, who were excited after eating noodles, have been wandering and escaping for 3 years without even seeing a meaty star, so, surprisingly, these 3 people still have the best days. The table was a bit quiet, almost imperceptible to the sound of chewing. Bai Jiji gradually restrained her smile and silently took small bites to clean the dishes in the bowl. Her expression gradually darkened. Lao Jimeng. It's not that I and the old leopard are greedy. Children can't eat the beast meat in the northern region, not to mention children. Even if we come here, we'll have to poison each Bar Huashan cultivator to death. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Inner Pill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Inner Pill. After a long silence, Bai Jiji finally regained her senses. With trembling cold fingers, she took out 2 extremely moist colored beads from her arms. The beads were blue and gold, each with a light golden glow. She pursed her lips, which were slightly red from the hot soup, and Bai Jiji's pale face couldn't contain the pain anymore. Grandma Ba and Grandpa Jackal can't endure it anymore. This morning, Master Song gave me their inner pill, she said. How could it be? Even yesterday. Actually. As soon as Bai Jiji entered the door, the 3 of them noticed something unusual in her expression. They had already been mentally prepared, but upon hearing this unexpected bad news, the 3 of them still couldn't believe it and froze before the meeting. Tears gradually filled the eyes of the 3 of them. Bai Jiji hurriedly said, "Don't be afraid. Grandma Ba and Grandpa Jackal didn't die, and Grandpa Song helped them transfer their divine souls to the inner alchemy. When we become successful in our cultivation, we can help them rebuild their souls. They have been guarding the array for hundreds of thousands of years, both carrying extremely thick merits. With their inner alchemy, we can safely pass through the strong wind." Mr. Song received news that there is a deserted city thousands of miles west, where there is a spirit tower. We don't have to wait for the spirit stones to accumulate enough, nor do we have to risk going to the southern region without self-protection. Bai Jiji tried her best to squeeze out a smile, wiping away the tears from the 2 little buns, and hanging the 2 inner pills carefully between their necks, pretending to be carefree and saying, "Look. Grandma Ba's rope is so beautiful, it's a jackal." The heavy pain made Bai Jiji unable to maintain her smile. She suppressed her heavy breathing and whispered, "If you can't help it, you can also cry for a while." Amidst a mournful scene, Bai Jiji clenched tightly onto the scorching pattern of begonia on her wrist, desperately suppressing the tears in her eyes. She doesn't want to cry, her sister can sense it in another world, she wants to smile. No matter what happens, she must work hard to hold on to the smile on her face. After taking a bath recklessly, Bai Gigi lay on a small stone bed, her heart burning hot, as if filled with a damp and oppressive cloud. Chaotic thoughts churned in my mind, tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. At one moment, I think about Grandma Ba who has taken good care of them for 3 years, and at another moment, I think about Grandpa Jackal who always talks about eating them but occasionally brings them some rare things. Later, when I first saw Grandma Ba, I was almost scared to death by the small mountain-like snake head. At that time, she had only been in this world for a year, and together with Chi-Chi's sister, she was chased by the Xia family with her twins and fled everywhere. Relying on the last undirected teleportation talisman left by the twin mother, she managed to escape to this place. Before she could even determine her soul, she saw a small mountain-like giant snake head. At that time, she was so scared that her soul almost flew away. If it weren't for carrying the sense of mission of 2 children behind her back, she might have been scared out at that time. Grandma Ba saw that she was afraid and quickly turned into a dry little old lady. She even helped them find a place to live. If it weren't for Grandma Ba finding them a cave with a water source, the twins with only half of the northern bloodline would have suffered a lot more. Actually, Bai Gigi is very clear that those 2 great demons can't bear it anymore and wants them to help gather souls in the future. How could the great demon, who has endured for hundreds of thousands of years, compete for an impossible future on these weak chicken-like children? Even if she really can't bear it, Grandma Ba lacks the source and cannot summon the protection of the Spirit Tower, but what about Grandpa Jackal? Although entering the Spirit Tower will make you a beast spirit, doesn't that little old man always say that it's better to live than to die? Isn't it that we always say we want to eat her when we meet? Did you end up getting caught up in it? What exactly are they taking this step for? Everyone knows very well. Wiping away her sour eyes, Bai Gigi brushed the crabapple on her wrist, constantly comforting herself. It's okay. It's okay. Now she is on guard against those masterminds behind the scenes and will not give them any more opportunities to harm anyone around her. It's time to repay the hardships imposed on them. It's time to pay back those dog things that have harmed billions of lives. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Past and Past Events. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Past and Past Events. The reason why Bai Gigi is today is entirely because she has been a scapegoat for thousands of years and has been harmed step by the black hands in front of and behind the scenes. Bai Gigi knew that all of this happened 3 years ago, when she was on the brink of a serious illness, when her sister Bai Tang used mysterious power to send her to the primordial realm. According to the information transmitted by Bai Tang, Bai Gigi knew that her sister Bai Tang was originally a child of the Divine Wood clan, who was in charge of the 6 realms of Qi. As for her background, her sister doesn't know either. She only knows that she is actually a 10-colored koi with a tangled tail of karma. Her sister said that the 9-colored koi can be a god, and her background must be extraordinary. Bai Gigi can't remember where she came from. The only memory she has is the more than 10 years she spent with Bai Tang. Bai Tang's memory is just a fragment. I don't know how they met and how they came to be together. I only know that they have been together in one soul for thousands of years, always a foolish and foolish fool. The Qi Luck Divine Wood and 10-colored carp, which were supposed to have 1,000 pieces of auspicious energy and a strong aura, have become a pitiful little creature plagued by various illnesses and a miserable background for thousands of years. Having lived for hundreds of lifetimes, each life has become more and more miserable. There is no such thing as the most miserable, only the more miserable, the kind of tragedy that is unparalleled. This is the first world that they accompanied in the wilderness world. In this world, their identities are descendants of a destitute small family, or perhaps they can be called remnants. The entire family is left with only the foolish Bai Gigi and her older sister, Bai Qing, who is 100 years older than her. Originally, Bai Qing's spiritual root qualification was very good, with 80% of her alien spiritual roots and rare bloodline. so she should have a very good future. But she is such an excellent and proud woman, who, for the sake of an enlightenment fruit, was forcibly married by her sect to a second-generation cultivator who should have become her Taoist companion and became a concubine. This is the most incomprehensible part of Bai Zhiji. Although Qi Jigua is very rare, its effect is only ordinary. With Bai Qing's wisdom, it is impossible to do such a brainless thing. It's like demolishing a house and building a chicken coop, it's just ridiculous. The great Ji of sliding the world. But what's even funnier is still ahead due to various reasons. Bai Qing's life after marriage was very difficult. After enduring several years of hardship, she finally gave birth to a pair of twins, who are the daughters of heaven in this world. The idiot accompanied by Bai Zhiji's sisters didn't exist in the world, but the world was suddenly turned around by some unknown force, which made her suddenly appear in the world, becoming Bai Qing, whose parents had died for more than 30 years. 3-year-old sister. This mother and daughter have caused great harm. Bai Qing, who was supposed to marry a successful husband and become a great cultivator, not only became a concubine with the help of Bai Zhiji, but also died inexplicably at the age of 2 to save the silly Zhiji twins. The twins, who should have grown up carefree under the protection of their parents, grew up smoothly at the top of this world and saved this fragile world, inexplicably became abandoned children without a mother or father. Silly Zhiji ate the Qi Ji fruit, and her intelligence finally stopped at the level of 6 or 7 years old. She struggled to feed her twins until they were 6 years old, but unfortunately, they died on the day they were supposed to be enlightened. Success has hindered the future of 2 children. Silly Zhiji's entire life was like the funniest and most clumsy script. Everything was so inexplicable. Until her death, she was contributing her own harmful spirit value. That's not right either. Her value continued after her death, and on the second day after her death, she inexplicably revealed the animal form of a fierce beast, revealing the bloodline of a plague beast. The twins also suffered from discrimination and exclusion as a result, being oppressed and persecuted by their sects and cults, and ultimately fell into an underground arena without a burial ground. According to the entire message from Bai Tang, in this distorted world, not only did silly Zhiji suddenly appear that should not exist, but also a space-time tumor that should not exist. The reborn. Whether it is the existence of silly Zhiji or the existence of the reborn, their role is very clear. Obstructing and harming the children of the heavenly family in this world, disrupting the order of this world. The rebirth has a dark hand behind it, while the silly Zhiji is facing the cause and effect in front. For some unknown reason, this world is very fragile. Once the heavenly blessed die, the whole world will collapse instantly, and the karma of world destruction and the resentment of life will all entangle around silly Zhiji. Follow them to destroy the next more fragile world. The more worlds they destroy, the heavier their karma becomes. They have been with them for thousands of years, and they have already destroyed hundreds of worlds. Now, their karma is extremely strong, and their souls are almost destroyed. If it weren't for Bai Tang's unknown power to send her to this world, their last destination would have been their death from a previous illness. The people who harm them often pretend to save some creatures when the world collapses, but instead, they have gained a lot of merit now. As the heavenly couple twins are about to turn 6, Bai Zhiji's main task is to protect them from growing up well. As long as the people born in heaven grow up smoothly, the path to heaven in this world can be opened smoothly, and the origin of the world can be slowly restored. When the origin of this world is restored, it will be the death of those who truly harm the world. Tomorrow is the beginning of everything. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Praying for Heaven and Crossing the Evil Formation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Praying for Heaven and Crossing the Evil Formation. After a night of tossing and turning, Bai Zhiji couldn't remember when she fell asleep. She only remembered her fantastical dreams. One moment she swam freely in the water, one moment she was filled with lotus flowers that tasted disgusting in the pond, and another moment she was filled with vague voices, as if praying to her across mountains and rivers. But more. It's still the little old man who talks incessantly about eating people, and the little old lady who has a head the size of a small hill but a withered body. The next morning, as soon as the sky turned slightly white, the white gardenia was awakened by a strange fragrance that rushed straight to the taste buds. What kind of lotus? What is praying for? All have been dissipated in the depths of memory, leaving only the pain of losing loved ones deeply suppressed in the heart. In Bai Jiji's view, being able to make food delicious is an extremely remarkable talent. They have been hiding in the northern region for more than 2 years and can hardly find any other food except for the extremely tough snail and golden fir grass. For over 2 years, Sister Chi-Chi has been able to combine these two monotonous ingredients in different ways to create various delicious dishes, making this simple mining cave and even the boring days in the entire lonely town sweet. The two groups got up earlier and were packing their small bags at this time. A few uniquely shaped stones, several bright red snail shells, 2 black wooden swords, and a small fist-sized dark green turtle were neatly arranged next to 2 fluffy little blankets. This little quilt is still from the past 2 years. Grandma Ba collected the hair that Grandpa Jackal and his companions had shed, and woven it for them. It was soft and warm, and together with Grandpa Song's small vine basket made from branches with some spatial power, it was the only 2 most precious assets in their family. Before leaving, the 4 of them bid farewell to their old neighbors who had been protecting them for over 2 years. It was a dangerous journey, perhaps. This was their last encounter before leaving. Grandpa Leopard and Grandpa Meng suddenly changed their faces and insisted on seeing them off, but in the end, they were firmly stopped by Bai Jiji and others. Although these big demons are all silent, Bai Jiji is clear that the spiritual town that these big demons have been guarding for hundreds of thousands of years is actually a spiritual formation. It is based on the earth as the plate, the sky as the dome, and these great demons as the eyes. Praying for heaven to cross the evil formation. As the great demons who have been in the eye of the formation for hundreds of thousands of years, they have long been trapped here and cannot leave. If they leave forcibly, they may have to use their lives to fill it before leaving. Mr. Song gave them a big surprise. A rattan magic weapon that could hold 2 cute children. With this treasure, the 2 little ones on the difficult journey can be carried by the naturally powerful Bai Jiji. The originally 1 or 2 month journey can be at least 3 to 5 times faster. Farewell to the distant old neighbors, the group finally left their stable home for 2 years and set off on an unknown path. The northern region is filled with ignorant monsters rampaging everywhere. Bai Jiji originally thought that even with the protection of internal alchemy, this trip would be very dangerous. I didn't expect that most of the defending spirits along the way were old friends of the neighbors, and I don't know how the big demons delivered the message. Those big demons not only helped them clean up the monsters on the road, but also gave them many meeting gifts such as scales, nails, whiskers, and stones. The route of this trip for a few people is along the southernmost border of the northern border, heading west, and the deserted city is located at the junction of the northern and western borders. The further westward they went, the more desolate their sight became. From the 8th day onwards, the few of them could hardly find any sight of a living demon. Occasionally passing through the mountain valleys, one can see some huge and dilapidated demon bones, indicating that there were once great demons here who silently sacrificed their lives for the sake of this world's creatures. Xiao Qianlan also found an inner pill the size of a small fist. The faint blue inner pill had already lost its vitality and even its shape had become somewhat bumpy. It was like an ordinary round stone, stuck tightly between the stones, and Bai Jiji's immense strength remained motionless for a while. But when Xiaoqianlan lightly poked it, it rolled out slowly. By the 13th day, there was no way out in the desolate wilderness. Bai Jiji struggled to find her way and trekked slowly. On the barren wilderness, even the ignorant beasts refused to stay, and only the most ferocious few populations remain in this wilderness. The 4 of them carefully walked around one by one with the tokens of the great demons. Perhaps it was the aura of the chosen son of heaven, or perhaps the deterrent power of the great demons was too strong. The 4 of them struggled for a few days but were not discovered by the monsters on the 15th day. Looking around, the wilderness was filled with desolation, with almost nothing except for hard rocks and sharp whistling winds. Even monsters and golden fur were extremely rare. As she moved westward, the power of the strong wind became stronger. On this day, Baizhiji was struggling to move forward against the strong wind, when she suddenly saw a pair of terrifying figures with black energy rushing towards her from far to near. When the figures saw Baizhiji and her entourage, they suddenly burst out with powerful energy, even extinguishing the black energy around them. Two black shadows quickly rushed towards the few people, so frightened that Xiaoqianlin and Xiaoxianbao both pulled out their small wooden swords and prepared to face the enemy. Bai Qiqi also controlled the wooden body to jump out, ready to fight desperately. Baizhiji did not move. She could clearly feel the pair of black shadows, without any intention of harming them. The tremendous energy just now was ecstasy. Yes. It's ecstasy. It's the ecstasy of survival. This is Baizhiji's ability, Grandpa Song said. She may have had good luck and received blessings from those stingy and stubborn old beasts, which gave her the ability to distinguish between good and evil. Unfortunately, Baizhiji herself doesn't remember anything. Sure enough, the pair of figures stopped not far from the crowd, carefully spitting out a beautiful beast egg and two shimmering spiritual grasses. The two black shadows pushed things in the direction of the few people, with a strong pleading expression in their eyes. Surprisingly, it is a family of colorful divine deer. The first auspicious sign in the world of flood and wilderness. Baizhiji looked at them with blood-shining but still pure eyes, pleading almost humbly. She clenched her fists and nodded seriously, swearing directly. Heaven and earth serve as evidence, and I, Baizhiji, will take good care of him. When he grows up, I will find a way to take him to see you all. The five-colored deer, upon hearing Baizhiji's oath, burst into a huge smile in their eyes and bowed deeply to her. They looked at the beast's egg with great affection and turned around to step in the direction of their arrival. Obviously, they are the defending spirits who came out of the western frontier and are planning to go back. If it weren't for the protection of these guardian spirits in the flood and wilderness realm, it would have been covered by evil filth long ago. Don't worry, he will definitely be fine. I cannot guarantee that he will be safe and smooth all his life. But we will treat him like family and do our best to protect him well. After listening to Baizhiji's words, the five-colored deer paused in their footsteps, then turned their heads and bowed deeply to the few people. The few people were unwilling to accept it, so they quickly avoided the salute and shook their arms to bid farewell to the pair of spirit deer. Their cultivation of such a great demon should be able to transform, but now they can't even speak up. Obviously, they have run out of oil and the lamp has dried up. This farewell may be forever. Does he have a name? The eyes of the big demons flickered, both showing a look of ecstasy. Names. If you want to form a master-servant contract, spirit beasts cannot have a name before the contract. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. The Dark Tower of the Wasteland City. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. The Dark Tower of the Wasteland City. Baizhiji stuffed the brightly colored spirit beast egg into Xiao Qianlan's arms to protect it and continued her journey westward. Xiaoxianbao was holding a turtle in his arms, which was also fantastic. When Bai Qiqi wanted to use it for the third time to cook soup and supplement the little ones, the little turtle struggled to imagine a blue-green snake behind his back. Originally, this little guy was not an ordinary spinning turtle, but a weak and explosive Xuanwu. It's not some kind of Xuanwu mixed race, it's just a legendary Xuanwu who explodes in the sky and earth. It's truly true Xuanwu. However, this little Xuanwu is clearly not fully developed, unable to even nibble on a grass peel, and the small snake on its back is also faintly visible, with a very weak breath. But this little one is now being cherished by Xianbao, almost a little girl who regards food as her life, saving a little bit of food every day to feed it. After only a dozen days of hard work, the little turtle with the size of a small fist is almost as big as a small palm, and the little snake is gradually solidifying a bit. Little Turtle is also very close to Xiaoxianbayer, and spends all day hiding in Xiaoxianbayer's arms from Bai Chi-Chi. The road behind was very calm, obviously the spirit deer had cleared the way for them. Along the way, they encountered many scattered bloodstains, but there were no animal shadows at all. This made the originally most difficult section of the road for a few people exceptionally comfortable. The 4 people, whose skin had been scratched with bloodstains by the strong wind, finally arrived at the foot of the deserted city on the evening of the 17th. The deserted city is located under a huge cliff facing away from the wind, and the heavenly punishment did not completely destroy it. There are still a small number of buildings left, and the original appearance of the deserted city can still be seen. In the center of the deserted city, a vast ancient tower named Tongxian stands tall between heaven and earth. Time has stained the tower with the vicissitudes of time, but it has not left any scars. A few miles around the tower, there seems to be a protective barrier, and the power of heavenly punishment is blocked outside. Within the barrier, there are dazzling golden flowers everywhere, making this place very vibrant. Rows of small residential buildings and shops were well protected by the barrier, and to the surprise of several people, many people still lived in what was originally thought to be a deserted and bustling city. Those people, upon seeing the arrival of the group, opened the doors and windows one after another to look around, and even a few chubby children ran over with a smile, throwing a few green leaves at the 4 of them and running away with a smile. After a while, the children called for a little old man with a white beard. The old man cleared his throat, twisted his beard full of golden flowers, and shook his head and head, asking, "Which city are you from? What are you doing here?" Xiaoxianbayo saw such a beautiful place for the first time, and his big apricot eyes were full of surprise. He looked at the children running around and the old man covered in beard and flowers, and was already stunned. "We come from Lingzhen and come to the desolate city to awaken the spirit." Xiao Qianlan revealed a milky smile and answered clearly. The little one had a pair of shiny black peach blossom eyes, and looked seriously at Grandpa Hua bearded in front of him, his gaze somewhat strange. The little old man, who was a bit dizzy from being violently hit by a smile, paused and said, "What Qi Ling wants to eat here? All the food, don't think about hiding it. No matter where you hide it, the old man can find it." Eating. Bai Jiji, who was speechless by the strong wind, breathed a sigh of relief. There was nothing in her house, except for some food. In order to enlighten the spirit, she dug grass and fruit for 2 years and planned to go to the southern region to exchange for some spirit stones, and now she has them all on her body. However, this thing is too difficult to dig. It only exists during the bitter rain and strong wind seasons, and even if they save money, they haven't saved much. If they all take it out, they may have to starve for several days on their way back. She was just about to take out her precious food and find another way to live in the future, but was quietly grabbed by Xiao Qianlan. Xiao Qianlan took out more than 10 round fruit cakes and handed them over. "Take a look at this. We brought some delicious taro cakes. Is that all? Even though you still have half hidden in your basket. Hide you all and take out all the fruit cakes, only enough for 3 people. No. Only enough for 2 people. Xiao Qianlan's face, which was panting, showed a puzzled expression. She broke off half of the cake and stuffed it into the little old man who was full of beard flowers. She sighed and said, "I'll give you a try." Without saying a word, she pretended to replay the cake. The little old man took the cake and put it into the import, and his eyes immediately lit up. He quickly stopped Xiao Qianlan and said, "Forget it. Forget it. You go, you owe me enough cake." Xiao Qianlan's steamed buns were full of positive colors and she firmly said, "It's a promise, never break your promise." "Okay. It's a deal." Bai Jiji looked at the little old man who reached an agreement with Xiao Qianlan in just a few words and felt very emotional. Compared to the human race with complex minds, it is better to speak with a simple spirit. Yes. The old man in front of me with a beard and flowers is not a village chief, and the people next to the Qiling pagoda are not real people either. These people are too quiet, there is no noise at all. When the old man speaks, a group of people will be quiet, when children are laughing, adults will quiet down, when adults speak, all the smiling children will immediately shut up. Everything in front of me, like an old movie with dropped frames, appears so false except for the vibrant golden flowers. See, it's a bit lonely again. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Feilian Divine Beast. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Feilian Divine Beast. Standing in front of the dark spirit tower, the four of them were uncontrollably excited, with red eyes and almost tears streaming down their faces. Qiling Pagoda. The hope of all living beings in the vast wilderness world. After the great cataclysm, the energy in the flood and wilderness world was depleted, and the laws were disordered. Countless powerful creatures were unable to adapt to the new environment and were on the brink of extinction. It is the gods who have exhausted their divine power to build 90.9 enlightenment towers for the impending collapse of the wasteland, and have also built a remarkable inheritance. Powerful beings who have been suppressed and unable to survive can use the power of their origin to call for the protection of the spirit tower. The human race, who is weak yet favored by the heavens, can survive tenaciously and awaken compatible animal spirits to coexist in the spirit tower. Beast spirits can gain new life through this, and fragile human offspring can also receive the protection of beast spirits, increasing their chances of survival. The creatures of the primordial realm relied on such mutual support to embark on a new path of life in dire straits. However, due to the strong reproductive ability of the human race and the increasing number, the probability of successful spiritual enlightenment is not very high now, only a 10% chance. Each human child has 3 opportunities for enlightenment before reaching adulthood, until they succeed. Inspiration, like spiritual roots, is the hope of all children. Of course, there are also a few animal spirits who are said to be helpful. In the year of fleeing in the eastern region, Baizhiji even heard of a girl who summoned the black-toothed spirit. The beautiful little girl's teeth turned black, and it is said that she was divorced by her crush because of it. At that time, the speaker shook his head in regret, with an excited expression in his eyes. However, Baizhiji had seen the girl from afar. The little girl was full of energy, and there was no haze after being divorced. Once the beast spirit is summoned, it cannot be changed. Once a contract is formed, both parties will be firmly bound and accompany each other for a lifetime. The first generation of Xiaoqianlin and Xiaoxianbao awakened a pair of bipedal birds. The bipedal birds were attracted by the accompanying aura of twin twins and became their companion beasts. Together, they embarked on a journey of immortality with ease, becoming the first pair of animal spirits to ascend to immortality in the wilderness world. However, after the second little one was persecuted, the reborn and her minions summoned the same pair of winged birds, and the 2 little ones ultimately died in their mouths. Although Baizhiji knows that this pair of lovebirds probably have no lasting memories, she really doesn't want to face them. Apocalypse begins. A circular small platform measuring over 10 meters square slowly rose in front of the Tongxian pagoda. As long as the awakener stands on the platform, a light curtain will appear on the tower, displaying their spiritual roots, qualifications, bone age, bloodline, etc., awakening the corresponding animal spirits. The awakened animal spirits can consider whether to form an agreement with the awakener based on the information. After the beast spirit makes a choice, its race, abilities, and so on will also be displayed on the light screen. The children of the awakening spirit can also choose whether to form a covenant with the summoned beast spirit. Of course, there are only 3 opportunities, and if missed, there will be no more opportunities in this life. The little old man, full of beards and flowers, urged a few people to start quickly. Xiao Qianlan took a big step up the stairs and stood at the center of the round platform. The dark body of the tower began to emit light blue rays from the bottom, which surged towards the top layer by layer with a unique rhythm. The situation of Xiao Qianlan appeared on the light screen: race. Human race, spirit root. Wind, blood lineage. Hongmeng bird, bone age. 6 years, qualification. Excellent. Note. Some cunning cubs. Bai Jiji pinched her trembling fingers and cheered on the rising green light in her heart. The spirit tower has a total of 88 floors, and the higher the level, the stronger the beast spirit becomes. The first generation of dragon and phoenix twins awakened the winged bird on the 79th floor, breaking the record of 10,000 years in the mountain and sea realm and causing a sensation for a long time. As Huaguang soared all the way to the 77th floor, it gradually slowed down and began to slowly wrap upwards. Bai Jiji knew that this was a sign that some animal spirits had begun to take notice of Shao Qianlan. 78, 79. 79. Don't be 70.9, Bai Jiji was very conflicted in her heart. On the one hand, she was afraid that she would miss the opportunity if she missed out on the birds, and on the other hand, she was really disgusted. Fortunately, the blue light finally slowly jumped over the 79th floor and reached the 80th floor, but did not stop. Instead, it quickly climbed up a few more floors before gradually stopping and circling around the 86th floor. A few people's faces all showed signs of ecstasy, and they became 80.6 layers of beast spirits have taken a liking to Shao Qianlan. 86 floors. Hundreds of thousands of unparalleled geniuses may not appear in the world of flood and wilderness. When they were wandering in the eastern realm, they had heard of some stories about young geniuses being looted by major sections. Those who go up 70 floors are considered extraordinary figures, and those who go up 50 floors are considered geniuses. Amidst the eager anticipation of several people, the surrounding blue light spun several times on the 86th floor, rolling out a brightly colored little beast and casting it into the small waves. A shining line of text appeared on the light screen: race. Flying Lian, dot. Attribute. Wind, ability. Control wind, devour, qualification. Excellent. Note. Strange cub. What was thrown into Shao Qianlan's arms was a fierce little beast with a bird's head, deer's body, antelope horns, and snake's tail. The little creature's fur was very unique, although it was black, it suddenly showed a colorful feeling, very gorgeous and dazzling. The little one looked at Xiao Qianlan with a pair of sparkling big eyes. After feeling Xiao Qianlan's love, he whimpered and bit his fingers to complete the spiritual contract. Feilian. These little question marks are related to the background of the cubs, which will be explained later. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Fierce Beasts Facing Willows. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 9. Apprenticeship Conference. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Apprenticeship Conference. The last one to come on stage was Bai Qiqi, who was almost 16 years old when she was murdered and had been trapped for several years. After coming to the world of floods and wastelands, she also experienced 3 years of turmoil. I don't know if it's counted as 16 years of being a human, or 6 years of being a soul, more likely to be counted together. She didn't have much hope, but she came and naturally wanted to give it a try. Noticing that the small hands holding her palms were covered in sweat, Bai Qiqi smiled slightly and patted them reassuringly, then strode up the stage with a meteor. Amidst the tense gazes of several people, Bai Qiqi, who tried her best to calm down, stood on the round platform and waited for a while. Sure enough, there was no response from the spirit tower. Bai Qiqi felt a bit disappointed and sighed inwardly. Just as she was about to step down, she saw a ray of black light floating from the dark tower. This black light did not climb the tower, but instead spun around her in a circle of thieves. Like a sleazy light dealer. After a few turns, the lewd black light suddenly patted Bai Qiqi's head, indicating that she was waiting in place. A huge dot appeared on the screen of light. The black light crawled back into the tower, and after a while, it rolled up a pitch-black milk doll for Bai Qiqi. Black light poke. Punk. Punk. Waking up the chubby little nanny, they stared at each other for a moment. The nanny's face was twisted by the black light and turned to Bai Chi-Chi in confusion. The round and bewildered eyes of the little baby who had been twisted met Bai Chi-Chi's bright and excited water-cut eyes, and their 4 eyes met each other, both of which were somewhat stunned. A dazzling line of text quickly appeared on the screen of light: race. Nightmare, attribute. Fire, ability. Control fire, qualification. Excellent. Note: as the nightmare tribe that fears flames the most, its ability is actually playing with fire. It is indeed a somewhat strange little thing. Of course, as the nightmare tribe that uses singing to bewitch all beings, Tianmu seems even more strange. After staring at each other for a while, Bai Chi-Chi quickly straightened his body, nodded repeatedly, and his spirit lit up. The contract was completed. 1 big and 1 small were pushed down the stage by the black light. Bai Chi-Chi walked down the stage in a daze and looked at the chubby little child in her hand. Suddenly, she felt a little excited and became. Although it doesn't look very impressive and there are some minor flaws, we still have a strong spirit. Look at this little guy, is he dark and spirited? Is he pretty? Does he look like a little coal ball? The little one glanced at Bai Chi-Chi, who praised her kung fu for being so impressive, and then spat out a black flame the size of a soybean. Z. Z. The small flame quickly burned a deep, bottomless hole on the bluestone ground. Wow! I can spew fire. I can spew coal. It's so amazing. Xiaoxianbao happily slapped his little hands red. The mute little chubby guy said, Okay. Coal balls are just coal balls. You can speak, you have reason. After the successful enlightenment, the 4 of them stayed under this comfortable tower for some time, with a golden sea of flowers against rows of blue brick houses and sweet fragrances in the air. The days here are so beautiful, so comfortable that people want to put on airs and stay forever in this secluded paradise. But just thinking about it, after all, this world of the wilderness is a place where even drinking from the north and west can make you scream. The little old man was completely overturned in his understanding of the world when he found out that those cookies were actually made from weeds. A few little ones' cognition has also been overturned. This seemingly unremarkable little old man is actually a flower spirit. It is the most remarkable divine elixir in the world of floods and wastelands. The defilement-removing herb. Cleanliness, as the name suggests, what is the current situation in the flood and wilderness world? And this weed also has a characteristic: its flowers can purify the spiritual roots and physical body when worn. When a few people left, they could be said to be walking with a full load. Although they brought a bunch of edible cubs, the burden of life seemed to be heavier. But now all 4 little ones are dressed in green and shiny new clothes, with exotic flower plants sent by the little old man around their necks. Especially by Gigi, because the story was told so brilliantly, the old tower even gave her a small world pearl. Each person told the story one by one, and no matter where Bai Gigi goes in the future, she will bring some storybooks to the old tower. The old tower doesn't have high requirements, it can be written or bought by oneself, mainly for a wonderful experience. Bai Gigi expressed that this is feasible. Very feasible. There are many stories in her heart. After more than a month, in the southern border. At this time, it is deep spring season, and the weather has gradually become hot, making people's hair want to curl up. In the past, people had already started to avoid the summer heat, but this year, cities and towns are still crowded and bustling, just because the grand gathering of apprentices that resounds throughout the wilderness has begun again. This grand event is held once every 6 years, and cities under various sects in the southern region have set up recruitment bases. Bai Gigi and her companions naturally chose the closest Juxian city to the northern region. Juxian City is the territory of the Immortal Spirit sect, but it is not the only sect that accepts disciples here. There are various major doors available, mainly to allow children to travel as little as possible and ensure their safety as much as possible. The apprenticeship venue is located on the Juxian Square in the center of Juxian City. This Juxian square can be said to have a good Xianjia style, and the entire ground of the square is paved with expensive Xianwen stones, pure and flawless, with a dense spiritual energy. There are faint waves of fairy music when stepping on it. At this time, transparent barriers were surrounding Juxian Square, and a 2-foot-high temporary stand was erected to the south of the square. On the stands, dozens of apprentices from various major gates were sipping tea and leisurely observing the movements on the square. To the north of the stands, there is a row of wide red sandalwood tables, with 88 black and leisurely spirit measuring plates that are half a person high arranged side by side on the table. The elders outside the square were crowded, making some noise. The half-aged children in the square were in a silent and orderly queue of 88, waiting for spiritual testing. Hee *******, caught a bug, welcome everyone to comment, end of this chapter. Chapter 10. Immortal Family Style. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Immortal Family Style. At this moment, Bai Shi was on the Juxian Square, which was shrouded in immortal energy and surrounded by spiritual cranes. 4 people stand in different teams. The twins are not very similar, and their separate actions have smaller goals. Who knows if they will run out with the 2 children, and the reborn will also run out. Bai Jiji pinched her little finger and calculated that the age of the reborn person was similar to hers, which was the best age for apprenticeship. However, these things are not important at the moment. Bai Jiji set aside those annoying people and continued to observe the situation on the square. Looking towards the head of the team from afar with a slight tiptoe, the appearance of those spirit measuring plates resembles that of later blood pressure agents. There are 2 round spirit plates in front, 1 large and 1 small, and a half-meter high scale at the back. The spirit tester's hand is placed on the small spiritual plate. If there is a spiritual root, the corresponding position on the large spiritual plate will light up, and the purity of the spiritual root will be displayed on the scale. In the center of the large spiritual plate, the children's enlightenment status can also be displayed. At the top of the scale, there is a small light curtain that can show whether the children have any special bloodlines or not. This can be called the black technology of the cultivation world. It seems to be more detailed than the spirit tower. After observing for a while, Bai Jiji realized that her assumed concealment was simply impossible to achieve. Even an 18th generation ancestor of a spirit testing plate could reveal it for you. Unless you don't apprentice, how can you cultivate without apprentice? How to become stronger? Do you rely on meditation? Bai Jiji tiptoed to look at the spiritual plate for a while, then looked at the long dragon with over 100 people ahead. She sighed inwardly and silently took out the purple chicken from her arms and pressed it against her head. Zaikunping. It's been a long time since he couldn't read the thoughts of the girl who was ordered by his ear and face, and he hasn't been in this little human's mind but. Why? What is this little brat really thinking? Is Mr. Kunpeng used for shading? System research, but my furry head is a bit fluffy with prickly hair, and I feel quite comfortable lying down. It's been a long time since I was almost injured by bang, bang, and bang last time. Yes, bang bang bang. The scene was very cruel. It was the nth time that Bai Jiji secretly complained about the hair loss of the old tower in her heart. Yes. The old tower, which cannot be left behind by time, has some hair loss and is also quite serious. It's just the kind of tile falling off with a cold and steady sound. According to Bai Jiji's analysis, it may be due to endocrine disorders, probably idle. Then Bai Jiji was targeted, with several large bumps on her head in some areas so severe that she almost lost her hair. Hu Shu Tan, stretching his wings, Kunpeng grandpa, helped the little girl block out the dazzling sun as much as possible. Feilian, squatting on Qianlan's shoulder, also flew up to Qianlan's head upon seeing this, carefully covering his colorful black wings over Qianlan's head. Xiao Shangliu looked unhappy at first glance. How could Jiudo Lu fall behind when faced with something Soon, a very strange human-headed turtle shell hat appeared on Xiaoxianbao's head. Xiao Shangliu looked at her red and green color scheme with satisfaction, and wrapped her slightly hot snake body around Xiao Xuanwu's back, the completely pinched tool man. Xiao Xuanwu turned his head and looked around, feeling a bit proud. I am the best Xuanwu, I have 2 snakes on my back. Omega. Regarding this, the baby in Bai Chichi's arms expressed that he had become an emo. He was a useless 5, sob. Bai Chichi chuckled as she tossed the chubby guy in her arms upwards, continuing to observe the crowd on the square. Along the way, she noticed that most of the demons and cultivators depicted in the novel were actually very gentle. Nearly half of them are human beings, not those who are extremely vicious. It's just that their bloodline, physique, spiritual roots, or state of mind are more suitable for cultivating demons. There are also many pure and mixed-race demons, most of whom are gentle and courteous. The demonic energy is more violent than the spiritual energy, and cultivators are more likely to lose control. Therefore, they pay more attention to self-cultivation and self-cultivation, and those who are full of fierce energy and demonic cultivation are very rare. The depiction of those terrifying and cold ghost cultivators in the novel is even more surprising. Not only are they not cold, but they also have many merits and virtues, and their warm surroundings are very popular. At this time, Bai Chichi did not know that the reason why ghost cultivation shone so brilliantly was because only those with great merit and great fortune could become ghost cultivation in the realm of the flood and wilderness. There is no reincarnation for cultivators in the realm of the wilderness. Those who lack merit will have their souls scattered between this heaven and earth at the end of their lives, giving back the spiritual energy from their bodies to this heaven and earth. Only those who have great merit and great fortune have the opportunity to be favored by the heavenly way and become ghost cultivators. As for those who arise from deep obsession, they are not called ghost cultivators, but can only be called ghosts. Even if they have spiritual intelligence, they can mostly be considered as a special kind of spirit. Spirituals are born in various ways, most of which are very unique, with various skin and hair colors, and most of them are very quiet. Bai Chichi even saw a spirit of an unknown plant standing in the waiting area, slowly sprouting. A few people naturally have top-notch qualifications, so it's not too worrying. After all, it's the last day. The purity of the spiritual roots of the remaining children in the square is not as good as the previous few days. Those children from big families are naturally ranked first. Children from ordinary families are not inferior in qualifications, but inevitably have fewer resources than those from big families. The team in front of Bai Chichi was much shorter than the others, and soon there were only 4 or 5 people left in front of her at this moment. The first one in her line was a yellow-skinned little chubby spirit. The little chubby spirit was reaching out with a small round hand and placing it on the small spiritual plate. Soon, a bright yellow light shone on the large spiritual plate, and the light column on the scale rose to 80% of the position. A round and rolling little crow slowly appeared in the large spiritual plate. The spirit testing elder of this team is a spiritual cultivator. The spiritual cultivator looked at little Pang Ling with a loving expression in his eyes. He touched the green leaf on little Pang Ling's head and said in a warm voice, "Would you be willing to join my sect and become my eldest disciple?" Xiao Pangling was so excited that the leaves on her head were all sprouting and pulled up, and she quickly nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. End of this chapter.